All right. Did I read these books because characters or places in Bungo Stray Dogs are named after them? Yes. Did I enjoy these books? Not overly, or at least not all of them. And do I regret reading them? Absolutely not. I at least took something away from all of them, and I enjoyed very much certain aspects of them. Starting with Osamu Dazai's No Longer Human, this is a classic, and it is a classic for a reason. Enjoyment, I would argue this isn't a book to be enjoyed. It is definitely the most accurate depiction of depression and anxiety that I've ever read, and you're wallowing in misery and just a dark place pretty much the entire time. It follows it's kind of like a fictionalized memoir, but it's a fictional story but heavily influenced by the author's real life. And you have the character in different stages of his life, starting as a child, progressing into like adolescence, into adulthood. As a child, that was my favorite section by far. You get it's actually really relatable, which is scary. It's scary. Of him not feeling happy. He's not necessarily sad, but he doesn't feel any joy. So he's hiding his lack of emotions and just acting as a class clown, as if putting on a role of being human when he's not experiencing the emotions he thinks he should be experiencing. Just such heavy emphasis was put on not feeling joy or never being happy. Nothing makes him happy. And I really loved the beginning part of him as a child. From there, you progress through like failed dreams. He wants to be an artist, but he can only get work drawing comics. You go into alcoholism, his different relationships, how he takes advantage of majority of the women in his life, which is he says and does some things that is inexcusable, and he's very self-centered a lot of the times. When something very traumatic happens to his wife, he only cares about how it affects him, which did not like. The writing itself is very conversational, told almost like it's told in like journal entries almost, so writing almost stream of consciousness. And I can like that. However, I'm more of someone who needs like a strong narrative focus and plot, a driving goal or action. Whereas this kind of meanders around the main character's life, and that is not something I personally enjoy reading. I extremely appreciate how depression was portrayed in this story. The main character, I do not like, because I will not like someone who cannot take responsibility for his own actions and like calls prostitutes not even human. But there's also something to say about society's ability to take care of its citizens, like the social stigma of depression in I don't know what year Japan can have been good. The stigma around it, the mental health available, I'm assuming, was non existent. And is really touching on a lot of topics, mostly centered around depression, how people deal with it. The opening of this, like not even the prologue, I think it was an author's note or a translator's note, says that some people can only see the good in themselves, they fail to see their faults, where Osamu Dazai was a person who could only see his faults and not see his beauty. And that really accurately describes the entire feeling I had while reading this book. So, enjoyable read, no, but I am very happy I read it. It's, again, the most accurate depiction of depression that I have ever read. And I think, despite me not liking it and ranting my entire way through it, I feel like I need to read it again. My favorite section of this book is going to be actually near the beginning, where a man is given the journals and he's looking at these photographs, and there's 4 photos of the man at different stages in his life. And the first one, how the child is described, it's like an eerie building dread. Like I almost felt this was going to go into a horror movie. And I really loved it. And I do, like I said, despite not liking this book, I want to reread it almost immediately. Not almost immediately. Now that some time has passed, I want to reread it. But I also want to read Osamu Dazai's other works, so I will be getting to those eventually. All right, springboarding off of that one into The Stranger or The Outsider, depending on the translation, by Albert Camus. This is a French author. I apologize if I said his name wrong. And it is a little over 150 pages of the most dull, boring, detached man who cannot be bothered with anything going around him. And I binged it in one sitting. I am obsessed with this book. It is a new favorite book of all time. I cannot put into words how much I loved it. Why the hell didn't I read this in high school? I am jealous of everyone who sat through a discussion to study this book. So essentially, as I said, this man, detached, could not be bothered. No matter what is going on around him, death, animal abuse, trauma, fights, people lying, or even positive emotions, going on dates, supposedly falling in love. Nothing phases him. It's all irrelevant. It means nothing to him, so he does not react how one would expect. This man ends up on trial for murder. I don't know if the synopsis says whether or not he did or not, so we're not going to get into that. But like the courtroom scenes had my jaw on the floor with some of the dialogue used. I'm going to give 3 quotes because I loved them. So referring to the lawyer, he says that the truth was that I did not have a soul and that nothing human, not one of the moral principles that govern men's hearts was within my reach. Quote 2, essentially, when the emptiness of a man's heart becomes, as we find it has in this man, an abyss threatening to swallow up society. And last quote, he states that I had no place in a society whose fundamental rules I ignored and that I could not appeal to the same human heart whose elementary responses I knew nothing of. Essentially, this man just does not react the way society expects you to react. And he is being tried not for the murder he's accused of, but how he reacted after his mother's death. And they feel that it was not the correct response, and they're judging him for those reactions and blaming him for this murder and whether or not he can be held responsible and whether or not he's someone that can be in society. And he just has looked past everything and it's just like, I am a blimp in the grand universe. The universe does not care about me. I do not care about the universe. I do not care about these rules inflicted on me and imposed on me. And I will be happy in my days, whether it is a long life or a short life. And it's such a short book, I can't really give much more detail than that, but oh my god, I love this book so very much. So happy I read it. I think it was his detachment. I think it's because he was so detached from everything is why I love it, because he just never responded how I expected him to. 5 stars. 5 stars, new favorite. I want to reread this. It was perfect. It was honestly perfect. All right, the next one is a short story, but I'm not going to butcher the name, so just Ranpo. This author is most known for his detective novels, hence why the character in Bungo Stray Dogs is a detective. However, I could not get access to any of those books. So, instead I read one of his horror books, and my god, am I happy I read it. I loved every single page of this short story. I can't tell you much. It's called The Human Chair. I apparently already knew of this story just through like pop culture osmosis, because I've definitely heard different versions of this story. Essentially, a man, a chair maker, makes the most comfortable chair in the world, decides he wants to live in it, and that allows him to like break into people's apartments, and it goes from there. Like I was literally scared of the chair I was sitting on while reading this. I loved it so very much. I did get another short story collection of his that came from Amazon now, so I will be reading some more of his horror works, because I'm a fan. I'm a huge fan of this writing. The atmosphere, everything was just building up. I loved it. I loved it so very much. All right, and the final one. Crime and Punishment. Yes, me, who likes a nice, short, concise story without the meandering plot lines, decided to read a 700 Russian literature classic tome of a book because a character from an anime is named after the main character. Does this have anything to do with the anime or the character? Did it help me understand his character? No, absolutely not. I still read it. Did I enjoy it? While reading it, no. The discussions that I've read now online after the fact, yes, I definitely enjoy the philosophy discussed in this book. I just did not like the story that was the vessel for the philosophy to be discussed. Dostoevsky just had a very interesting life, and it was really nice to learn about the history of him. However, we're not going to talk about that. This is just the book, Crime and Punishment, And it was a very interesting read, very approachable, especially starting off. The language was not overly dense. The characters were entertaining. They were very overdramatic. It was very approachable for a 700-page read, at least for the first, like, 100, 200 pages. Essentially, it's turning a crime novel on its head where we are given the person who committed the crime, the one who was murdered, the motive for it, and now we're just going to explore and wallow in the psychology of the killer's mind and what he went through and diving into that, which was very good, except, my god, the amount of plot conveniences to keep this man out of trouble, keep his family out of trouble, get his family into trouble, and then all the characters just doing really stupid things. I wasn't a fan of the actual narrative story of this book. Character figures out he did something bad, gets sick, faints, repeat for about 600 pages. So like I said, beginning, loved it. Ending, not so much. But the exploration of like nihilism and the egocentric character and exploring ostracization from society. There's anxiety, there's depression, there's fear, poverty. Oh my god, the amount of discussion and the bad things about poverty. Yet somehow he is always given large sums of money, which he then gives away, so he's back into poverty. Oh my god, it was frustrating. And then we're going into viewpoints of if you're better than everyone else, you can disregard the laws of society and what's morally right. So I should be allowed to kill this person because Napoleon did it and he was a great man. And God almighty, the references to Napoleon over and over and over again. I swear, I actually did like aspects of this book. It's just, it dragged on for a long time and there were a lot of plot conveniences to get him out of certain situations. And then there's a heavy aspect on how religion plays a role in like your soul, I guess, and redeeming you for what you've done. And it's a very good conversational starter in terms of exploring the philosophy concepts. I just didn't like the story that was the vessel to describe these philosophy morals. So there's that. So those are the classics that I have read. And yes, I will be reading more that the Bungo Stray Dog characters are named after. Bye.